This past week, Israel was absolutely devastated by a series of heinous and barbaric attacks that were unwarranted. We're going to talk about Israel's attackers. I'm going to expose them by reading you their own charter. We're going to hear a speech from the President of the United States. I'm going to bring it all together for you, and I'm going to tell you about the other things that are happening in the world. Hold on to the seat of your pants, folks. The world is changing rapidly. History has been made, and we will never be the same again. All right, folks. Well, you know that it has been an absolutely insane week in the nation of Israel, and we have been bombarded with news that has been absolutely terrible. Now, for those of you that don't know, which I can't imagine there would be anybody that wouldn't know, Israel has been devastated by the actions of Hamas, and what they have been doing in Israel is reprehensible. Now, what happened was, of course, we know that a series of rocket attacks took place, and those rockets were not the story. The rockets were used as a diversion, in essence, for militant groups to come in, all Hamas, and destroy the lives of so many Jews all throughout Israel. Now, I want everybody to understand that this was a terrible week for Israel. As a matter of fact, historically speaking, this may have been the most shocking thing that has ever happened to them, at least in their nation, and probably since at least the war in the 70s. I think it's also important to note that when you look at the dynamics that took place in 73, we were not talking about the targeted elimination of Jewish civilians, right? We were talking about military targets. We weren't talking about what we are actually seeing right now. And so I just thought that I would spend some time talking about first of all, what the Quran says about the murder of infidels. We know that that's something that the Quran makes very, very clear. This is something that has to be exposed to the rest of the world. There's a lot of lies that continue to get communicated about the beliefs in Islam, what the Quran actually says and what it doesn't say. I'm going to spend just a moment outlining one aspect of the Quran that I think is worthwhile reading. And I think that it's worthwhile reading because when you read it, it proves the point, right? If you know it's not reliable and you know that what you are seeing is untrue, then why would you hold fast to those things as they're being true? The Quran tells its people to kill infidels, right? This is not something that we don't know. We see this all over the place, and it is very, very common, right? So look at this. I'm going to read this to you. This is, by the way, in the Quran. This is 354, and it says this. This is in Arabic. It says, وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَكَرِينَ. And basically what that means, it says identifying Allah as the chief of liars, the chief of deceivers. So if I have somebody making a representation to me that claims to stand on truth regarding a particular issue or some form of absolutism, and what they are telling me is based on the premise of a lie, why in the world would I believe it? But there's a lot of that that's going on. And of course, it's interesting because we know based on what the Quran says that practicing deception with infidels is something that is completely acceptable, and this level of circumvention is something that they don't have a problem with. Now, that's why if you sit down and you have a discussion about anybody, a real discussion about what things are actually communicated, you're either going to get two answers. You're going to get an answer that's birthed from ignorance, or you're going to get an answer that's actually birthed from deception. So we're going to talk about Hamas. We're going to talk about all of the things that sort of, tie into all of this. And I think that it's really critical for us to be able to develop an understanding of what all of this means, right? So let's just start with Hamas. Where did that word come from? What does it mean? Hamas is an acronym, but it's based on a series of Arabic words. And the phrase is very simple, right? In Arabic, it means harakat el makamwa al-Islamiyya, which basically means the Islamic resistance movement. Translating it word for word is a different characteristic, and I've done a lot of Arabic translation, especially recently with many of the speeches that we've seen being given and some of the news reports and some of the things that are going on. It's what we've been seeing here is an amazing amount of just ugliness that has been happening. And so this is that organization. Now, I want people to understand, because we're going to get into, by the way, a speech from the President of the United States. I'm going to play it for you. And then after the speech, I'm going to show you where the deception is. I'm going to show you how he's the one that created an overwhelming amount of many of the things that we've actually seen, and why so much of this is actually a major problem, right? But we have to start with what Hamas actually says. And it starts with their covenant, right? Their promise. I think it's very important to understand this. There is a charter that they established. That charter was issued on August the 18th, 1988. I think that's important to understand. So this charter guides exactly what they do and what they believe and how they believe it, right? So I want you to understand that Hamas is an extremist and fundamentalist movement. Now, I want to use the word fundamentalist because they believe in the fundamentals of the Quran. And if they believe in the fundamentals of the Quran, then they are going to believe in death of the infidel. And they absolutely hate Israel. As a matter of fact, they operate in the territories under Israeli control. That's where they mostly sit. And they have a covenant that is comprehensive. And the manifesto that you find in this, I would call it a comprehensive manifesto that is made up of 36 separate articles. Now, we're not going to be able to read through all 36 articles, but I do think it's important to understand that the purpose of those articles, every single one of those articles, promote the basic goal of Hamas, which is basically to destroy the state of Israel through jihad, right? And for those that don't know what jihad is, it means Islamic holy war. So there's a lot of examples from within the charter, every one of these charter articles that actually make it very clear that that is their purpose. I'm going to read a few of them to you so that you have a better understanding of how serious they are about the destruction of the Jewish state, the elimination of the Jewish state, right? We'll start with Article 6. I'll read a portion of Article 6. It says this. It says, the Islamic resistance movement is a distinguished Palestinian movement whose allegiance is to Allah and whose way of life is Islam. It strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine, right? So the whole idea here is we want to take over all of Israel, and the purpose is to bring in Sharia law, in essence, that actually controls the actions and the behavior of the people in Israel. That's exactly what this is all about, right? So they go on to speak about the destruction of Israel, and even in the very preamble of their charter, they say this. Here's the quote: Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. That's their words. Just as it obliterated others before it. That is literally those words, exact words that you will find in the preamble of this document, right? Let me read Article 11. There's one section of Article 11 that I should read to you because it's really ugly, right? Here's what it says. The land of Palestine is an Islamic waqf. By the way, for those of you who don't know the meaning of waqf, it's like holy possession, like we're the guardians, meaning Israel is the place that we are guardians of. When you use the term waqf, that's what it means. So it says the land of Palestine is an Islamic waqf consecrated for future Muslim generations until Judgment Day. No one can renounce it or any part or abandon it or any part. In other words, Article 11 sets the ground for basically saying we'll never have a two-state solution because the Jews don't deserve it. And if you don't think that that's what they really mean, listen to Article 13. It says this: Palestine is an Islamic land. Since this is the case, the liberation of Palestine is an individual duty for every Muslim wherever he may be. So in other words, wherever you are, no matter where you are around the world, your action should go towards the liberation of Palestine, meaning we should be able to get it back. So then in their charter, which you'll find in Article 15, there's a very specific call that goes out in Article 15. It says this. It says, the day the enemies usurp part of Muslim land, jihad becomes the individual duty of every Muslim. In the face of the Jews' usurpation, it is compulsory that the banner of jihad be raised. This is them calling people to jihad and the circumstances. Here's another area where they call for jihad. Article 33. It says ranks will close, fighters joining other fighters, and masses everywhere in the Islamic world will come forward in response to the call of duty, loudly proclaiming, "Hail to jihad." This cry will reach the heavens and will go on being resounded until liberation is achieved, the invaders vanquished, and Allah's victory comes out. This is their belief. This is a religious belief for them. This is exactly what they believe should be happening, right? Article 13 goes back to basically rejecting any type of peace treaty. Any negotiated peace settlements, it rejects it. Let me read a portion of Article 13 here. It says this. It says, peace initiatives and so-called peaceful solutions and international conferences are in contradiction to the principles of the Islamic resistance movement. A few other things are said, and then they go on to say, those conferences are no more than a means to appoint the infidels as arbiters in the land of Islam. There is no solution for the Palestinian problem except by jihad. Initiatives, proposals, and international conferences are but a waste of time, an exercise in what they refer to as futility, an exercise in futility. And they go so far, in case that sounded confusing to you, to condemn, give specific pictures of agreements that they condemn. Look at Article 32. Egypt was, to a great extent, removed from the circle of struggle against, they mean against Zionism, right? Was removed from the circle of struggle through the treacherous Camp David agreement. The Zionists are trying to draw other Arab countries into similar agreements in order to bring them outside the circle of struggle. Leaving the circle of struggle against Zionism is high treason, and cursed be he who perpetrates such an act. That's what it's saying there. Look at the anti-Semitic sentiment that they continue to communicate. Look at Article 7, right? And I'm not reading all of it, folks. I'm just giving you a small portion of it so that you have a better understanding of what it's all about. Look, the day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them. Then the Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees will cry out, "O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him." Folks, that's Article 7. Let me read Article 22. This will make you sick. The enemies have been scheming for a long time and have accumulated huge and influential material wealth, referring to Jews, by the way. With their money, they took control of the world media, and with their money, they stirred revolutions in various parts of the globe. They stood behind the French Revolution, the Communist Revolution, and most of the revolutions we hear about. With their money, they formed secret organizations such as Freemasons, Rotary Clubs, and Lions, which are spreading around the world in order to destroy societies and to carry out Zionist interests. They stood behind World War I and formed the League of Nations through which they could rule the world. They were behind World War II, though which they made huge financial gains. There is no war going on anywhere without them having their finger in it. This is referring to the Jews, referring to America. Again, look what they go on to say. Again, part of Article 32 here. The first article that I read to you, that first paragraph was Article 22. This is Article 32. Zionism scheming has no end. And after Palestine, they will covet expansion from the Nile to the Euphrates River. Listen to this, folks. When they have finished digesting the area on which they have laid their land, they will look forward to more expansion. Their scheme has been laid out on the protocols of the elders of Zion. No joke, folks. No joke. Let me read the remainder of Article 32 here. This is terrible. Let me just read it to you, and then we'll move on to other things. It says, the Hamas regards itself the spearhead and the vanguard of the circle of struggle against world Zionism. Islamic groups all over the Arab world should also do the same, since they are best equipped for their future role in the fight against the warmongering Jews. Folks, I'm going to make myself very clear to you, and I think that this is critically important that you understand it. I don't want you to lose sight of it because it's very, very important, okay? What we are looking at here is we are looking at evidence of the fact that Hamas and the Palestinian organization that follows with it has absolutely no desire to make peace. It is all about world domination, and that is their goal. And what we are watching them do right now is exactly what they have always been supposed to do. That's always the way that they've acted. And I think it's very, very ugly. So I just wanted to give you guys a really good picture of what all of this looks like. And I wanted to kind of, teach you exactly what they stand for and what they mean. And I think it's very, very important because when you begin to look at them as an organization, they're very dangerous. And this doesn't include a lot of the issues that relate to Hezbollah, which we'll probably spend some time exposing and talking about maybe at another show. But there's a lot of this stuff that is just substantial and very important for us to be able to understand because this is what drives all of this. And I think it's really critical for us to know that. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to end up looking at the speech that the President of the United States gave regarding what's going on in Israel. Now, I want to just caution people because I think this is like super important, right? I want to caution you to remember the fact that what you are watching here is in many ways likely insincere, right? Because the President of the United States is the one who's actually caused all of this, okay? Understand this because this is really, really important, right? There is scandal brewing for the Biden administration, especially after the Hamas attack, okay? I want people to understand that. It's very, very, very interesting, right? Because, look, there's a person by the name of Ariane Tabatabai who continues to serve as the chief of staff to Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low-Intensity Conflict, Christopher Mayer. Despite revelations, notice this, of her ties to the Iranian government intelligence network, the Iran Experts Initiative, and pressure from lawmakers for answers. This is a woman who has direct ties to Iran, and she is participating in high-level state action, right? Doesn't surprise anybody because the Biden administration unfroze $6 billion in Iranian oil revenue and agreed to a prisoner exchange on the 11th of September. Of course, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. We are partially responsible. Well, not we. The President of the United States is partially responsible for what we're actually seeing happening right now, in that these people were funded because of what he did. I think that's very, very important to recognize, right? And we could end up seeing some long-term war as a result of all of this. All of this is very serious, and that's what's going on. So I want to, with that in mind, play the video of the President of the United States giving an address. I think it's very important. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'll give you some analysis on it. I'm going to try to play it in its entirety for you so that you can kind of catch it, and then we'll just go from there. So let me go ahead and play it, and then we'll go from there.
Good afternoon. You know, there are moments in this life, and I mean this literally, when the pure, unadulterated evil is unleashed on this world. The people of Israel lived through one such moment this weekend. The bloody hands of the terrorist organization Hamas, a group whose stated purpose for being is to kill Jews. This was an act of sheer evil. More than 1,000 civilians slaughtered, not just killed, slaughtered in Israel. Among them, at least 14 American citizens killed. Parents butchered using their bodies to try to protect their children. Stomach-turning reports of babies being killed. Entire families slain. Young people massacred while attending a musical festival to celebrate peace. To celebrate peace. Women raped, assaulted, paraded as trophies. Families hid their fear for hours and hours, desperately trying to keep their children quiet to avoid drawing attention. And thousands of wounded, alive but carrying with them the bullet holes and the shrapnel wounds and the memory of what they endured. You all know these traumas never go away. There's still so many families desperately waiting to hear the fate of their loved ones, not knowing if they're alive or dead or hostages. Infants in their mother's arms, grandparents in wheelchairs, Holocaust survivors abducted and held hostage. Hostages whom Hamas has now threatened to execute in violation of every code of human morality. It's abhorrent. The brutality of Hamas, these bloodthirstiness brings to mind the worst rampages of ISIS. This is terrorism. But sadly, for the Jewish people, it's not new. This attack has brought to the surface painful memories and the scars left by a millennia of anti-Semitism and genocide of the Jewish people. So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. And we will make sure Israel has what it needs to take care of its citizens, defend itself, and respond to this attack. There's no justification for terrorism. There's no excuse. Hamas does not stand for the Palestinian people's right to dignity and self-determination. Its stated purpose is the annihilation of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. They use Palestinian civilians as human shields. Hamas offers nothing but terror and bloodshed with no regard to who pays the price. The loss of innocent life is heartbreaking. Like every nation in the world, Israel has the right to respond, indeed has a duty to respond to these vicious attacks. I just got off the phone with a third call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I told him, the United States experience what Israel is experiencing, our response would be swift, decisive, and overwhelming. We also discussed how democracies like Israel and the United States are stronger and more secure when we act according to the rule of law. Terrorists purposely target civilians, kill them. We uphold the laws of war, the law of war. It matters. There's a difference. Today, Americans across the country are praying for all those families that have been ripped apart. A lot of us know how it feels. It leaves a black hole in your chest when you lose family. Feeling like you're being sucked in. The anger, the pain, the sense of hopelessness. This is what they mean by a human tragedy, an atrocity on an appalling scale. But we're going to continue to stand united, supporting the people of Israel who are suffering unspeakable losses and opposing the hatred and violence of terrorism. My team has been in near constant communication with our Israeli partners and partners all across the region and the world from the moment this crisis began. We're surging additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish Iron Dome. We're going to make sure that Israel does not run out of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens. My administration has consulted closely with Congress throughout this crisis. And when Congress returns, we're going to ask them to take urgent action to fund the national security requirements of our critical partners. This is not about party or politics. This is about the security of our world, the security of the United States of America. We now know that American citizens are among those being held by Hamas. I've directed my team to share intelligence and deploy additional experts from across the United States government to consult with and advise Israeli counterparts on hostage recovery efforts. Because as president, I have no higher priority than the safety of Americans being held hostage around the world. The United States has also enhanced our military force posture in the region to strengthen our deterrence. The Department of Defense has moved the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group to the Eastern Mediterranean and bolstered our fighter aircraft presence. And we stand ready to move in additional assets as needed. Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. Our hearts may be broken, but our resolve is clear. Yesterday, I also spoke with the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and UK to discuss the latest developments with our European allies and coordinate our united response. This comes on top of days of steady engagement with partners across the region. We're also taking steps at home. In cities across the United States of America, police departments have stepped up security around centers of Jewish life. The Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation are working closely with state and local law enforcement and Jewish community partners to identify and disrupt any domestic threat that could emerge in connection with these horrific attacks. This is a moment for the United States to come together, to grieve with those who are mourning. Let's be real clear. There is no place for hate in America. Not against Jews, not against Muslims, not against anybody. We reject. What we reject is terrorism. We condemn the indiscriminate evil, just as we've always done. That's what America stands for. You know, just over 50 years ago, I was thinking about it this morning, talking to the Secretary of State, the Vice President in my office. Over 50 years ago, as a young senator, I visited Israel for the first time as a newly elected senator. And I had a long, long trip, a meeting with Golda Meir in her office just before the Yom Kippur War. And I guess she could see the consternation on my face as she described what was being faced, they were facing. We walked outside in that sort of hallway outside her office to have some photos. She looked at me all of a sudden and said, "Would you like to have a photograph?" And so I got up and followed her out. We were standing there silent, looking at the press. She could tell, I guess, I was concerned. She leaned over and whispered to me, she said, "Don't worry, Senator Biden. We have a secret rep in here in Israel." My word is what she said. We have no place else to go. We have no place else to go. For 75 years, Israel has stood as the ultimate guarantor of the security of Jewish people around the world, so that the atrocities of the past could never happen again. And let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back. We will make sure the Jewish and democratic state of Israel can defend itself today, tomorrow, as we always have. It's as simple as that. These atrocities have been sickening. We're with Israel. Let's make no mistake. Thank you.
Mr. President, what was your reaction?
So it's pretty interesting. He seems to have made a unilateral threat, really, truly, to Iran, which I think is extraordinarily hypocritical, being that he is the one that's been, in many ways, enabling Iran to do what Iran is doing. And then on top of that, the kind of money, not only that he's been giving to Iran, but the concessions that he's been giving to the JCPOA, which is the comprehensive agreement between Iran and the United States and a few other participants, has been something that has worked against Israel's security. So it's interesting now for him to say what he's saying, but I think that what he's doing is I think he's covering up for the scandal that this $6 billion that he just gave to Iran has created, because I think that we're finding out slowly but surely, and we're watching this, high-ranking members of Hamas are actually saying that a lot of the money that was unfrozen to Iran and given to Iran was given to them as well to fuel the weapon supply cache and all of the other things that they needed to be able to do the attacks that they've been doing. So we know that there is a tie that's directly to that. And then you take some of the news headlines that are up right now. Like, for example, the United States are going to attempt to enforce the Russian oil price cap, which that could be detrimental, right? I mean, if you think about it, they are looking to take steps to enforce this. As a matter of fact, it's Janet Yellen actually said that they're likely to take steps to enforce that, which can end up being disastrous for a lot of reasons, right? And the reason why that matters is because Russia has built its own global shipping infrastructure since the Ukraine war started, and that allowed Moscow to sidestep all of the Western oil price caps, right? And so now for them to come in and to say that they're going to enforce the price caps, it's going to make for a very, very difficult situation, especially as it relates to the G7. So the U.S. Treasury may focus on penalizing people who insure ships, right, for these things to happen in order to enforce the price cap. But the problem of that is that the Western price cap is going to fail because oil prices in Russia are going to spike, and that's going to end up hurting us. Just like it hurt us when we basically told Putin that we were going to sanction him. It made the ruble stronger because he required the ruble to be the currency that was used in order to buy their oil, and that made things way worse. And it matters. It's actually a big deal, right? And then Goldman Sachs is actually telling us that China is showing signs of what they call Japanification, right? And what that basically means is that China's economy appears even worse than Japan's did in 1990, and the maneuvers that Japan took in order to recover out of that economic failure looks like China is getting ready to put themselves in that place. Now, I think that that's kind of interesting because if Chinese officials end up providing fiscal and monetary support to keep up consumer spending, and overall economic growth, it's going to end up backfiring and become detrimental because the recession will increase in China, unemployment is going to grow, and what that's going to end up doing is accelerating the invasion of Taiwan. Now, all of that has something significant to talk about, and it all relates to the things that we're seeing. Now, I'm bringing out all these stories because when you bring all that together with what's going on in the Middle East, it's crazy. And there are lots of different flashpoints now that have been created by Hamas, right? The Israeli casualty count as of the day of this recording, which is Tuesday, has reached 1,000 dead, right, from the attack. The terrorist group Palestinian Islamic Jihad conducted a cross-border raid, which a lot of people are not talking about this, right? But it's true, into Israel from Lebanon, killing one Israeli officer before being driven back across the border by Israeli infantry and attack helicopters. But by the way, I want you to understand that casualty is significant. That's not a small casualty, and the IDF isn't really talking about it because of the implications of what happened in that. Some people will call that an intelligence failure, but it wasn't. It's just another day in the neighborhood, but it's very ugly, right? And then Hamas is now saying that they're going to execute Israeli and foreign hostages being held in Gaza, and they're not backing down from that, right? If Israeli forces conducted a ground operation, which, by the way, we know that the IDF is already beginning to do that, and it makes a big deal. And it matters to us because what happens is if we end up having a new flashpoint in the Middle East, and it is a new flashpoint, it's going to create the kind of marked instability that will open up the doors for other nefarious operations to take place, which could create a bigger problem, because that's on the heels of China's foreign policy in the Middle East failing, and failing for a lot of reasons. Number one, the desire for a two-state solution through the normalization between Saudi Arabia and China has failed, and that initiative is going to continue to fail, and everybody kind of knows that that's the case. And the hard stance that they're going to seek to take to want to rectify that is not going to work out, right? So China is in big trouble, right? And that desperation is going to bring them into Taiwan to do exactly what I think they're going to end up doing, which is going to create the kind of worldwide, just as David would say, balagan, right? And it's going to be very, very bad. It's going to be harsh. It's going to be damaging. And it's something that we have to wake up to, folks. Listen, I just want to bring all of this out to your attention because we are seeing evidence everywhere that Christ could not only come at any moment, but that all of this stuff is just about to blow up in our face. And I think that the summary to all of this is that Christ could come at any moment. It's time to wake up. We are living in a different world. We're living in a different place. And I think we have to, develop a better understanding of that truth because we're running out of time. And I think it's important for us to know that. So that's where we're at. Listen, we're going to continue to give you the best information that we can. We're going to release a video tomorrow on some of this stuff, and we're going to recap a lot of this. We got a video on Sunday coming for this. And until this, quells down a little bit, which I don't think it's going to, we're going to keep bringing information to you that's going to help you make sense of what's going on in the Middle East. And I think it's going to be beneficial. We'll bring some Bible teaching into it so that you understand what the Bible says about it. And we're going to continue to give you as much as we can to kind of help you grow in your knowledge of what's going on. We haven't even talked about the U.S. carrier group coming in. Which I may end up addressing for you within the next few days or so, because there's a lot of stuff that is sort of tied up in that. So all of that to say, folks, look up, right? We're running out of time, all right? God bless you guys. Continue to pray for Israel. Continue to pray for Jerusalem. Continue to pray for that peace. It's really, really important, all right? God bless you guys. We love you. Pray for Jerusalem.